She woke up every morning to the smell of coffee he made, just the way she liked it. She fell asleep every night to his arm wrapped around her waist, his breath steady against her neck. He told her she was his everything, his reason for breathing, the woman who gave his life meaning. For 7 years, she believed every word. For 7 years, she trusted him with her life, her heart, her future. But here's what she didn't know. While she was building a life with him, he was planning her death. While she was choosing curtains for their living room, he was researching how to stage the perfect accident. While she was laughing at his jokes across the dinner table, he was calculating exactly how much her life was worth. $350,000. That's what the insurance policy said. That's what he needed. And that's why she had to die. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the man who promised to protect her became the greatest threat she ever faced. You'll see how love became a weapon, how trust became her vulnerability, and how one woman came within seconds of losing everything to the person she loved most in the world. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. This is the story of Jennifer Mitchell, a 36-year-old elementary school teacher from a small town in Colorado, and David Mitchell, her husband of 7 years, a man everyone in their community respected and admired. This is a story about betrayal that went deeper than an affair, about deception that lasted years, and about a plot so carefully constructed that it almost worked. The question isn't just what David did. The question is how long he'd been planning it, what finally made him decide to act, and how close he actually came to getting away with murder. Because when Jennifer looks back now at those 7 years of marriage, she sees something she missed completely the first time around. She sees the clues, the patterns, the moments when he was testing her, preparing her, setting everything in motion. She sees a man who never actually loved her at all. Jennifer grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado, the youngest of 3 daughters in a family that valued kindness above everything else. Her parents ran a small hardware store downtown, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your dog's name, and whether you took sugar in your coffee. She was the girl who volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends, who brought cookies to new neighbors, who never had an unkind word to say about anyone. After college, she became a 3rd-grade teacher at Mountain View Elementary, and if you asked any parent in that school who their child's favorite teacher was, 9 times out of 10, they'd say, Miss Jennifer. She wasn't looking for love when she met David Mitchell at a charity benefit for the local fire department in the fall of 2015. She'd actually gone with her sister, had planned to stay for an hour at most, was already thinking about the stack of papers she needed to grade that weekend. But then this man approached her near the refreshment table, tall and clean-cut, with an easy smile, and asked if she thought the punch was spiked or just unfortunately terrible. She laughed, and that was it. That was the beginning of everything. David Mitchell was 41 years old, never been married, worked as a financial advisor at a mid-sized firm in Denver. He drove a sensible Toyota, owned a small house in the suburbs, coached youth soccer on Saturday mornings. Everyone who knew him said the same thing. He was reliable, responsible, the kind of man who showed up when he said he would, who remembered birthdays, who held doors as open and always picked up the check. Jennifer's parents loved him immediately. Her friends said she'd finally found a good one. They dated for 8 months before he proposed, right there in her classroom, after school. One Thursday afternoon with 24 roses and a ring he said belonged to his grandmother. The wedding was small and perfect, held in the backyard of her parents' house, with 100 guests. A cake Jennifer's aunt made from scratch. They bought a house together in the foothills, with a view of the mountains, adopted a golden retriever named Bailey, fell into the comfortable rhythm of married life. Jennifer taught her students, graded papers at the kitchen table, while David worked on his laptop beside her. On weekends they hiked, cooked together, watched movies on the couch. From the outside, they were the couple everyone wanted to be. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But that was exactly what David Mitchell needed everyone to see. The first time Jennifer noticed something was off came about 3 years into their marriage. Though she didn't recognize it as a warning sign at the time, David started making comments about money more frequently, asking questions about her teacher's pension, about the life insurance policy her school district provided, about what would happen to their assets if something happened to one of them. He framed it as responsible financial planning, as the kind of thing married couples should discuss. And Jennifer had no reason to doubt him. After all, he was the financial advisor. This was literally his job. So when he suggested they increase their life insurance coverage, she agreed. When he said it made sense for them, each to be the sole beneficiary on the other's policy, she signed the paperwork without reading the fine print. $350,000 if Jennifer died. David handled all their finances anyway. He paid the bills, managed their investments, dealt with the mortgage. Jennifer had access to their accounts, could check them anytime she wanted, but she never did because she trusted him completely. That trust was exactly what he was counting on. Around this same time, David started subtly isolating Jennifer from her support system, though she didn't realize that's what was happening. He'd suggest they skip her sister's birthday dinner because he'd had a rough week and just wanted quiet time together. He'd say her best friend Sarah talked too much, complained too often, brought drama into their peaceful life. He never forbade Jennifer from seeing anyone, never made demands or issued ultimatums. He just planted seeds of doubt, made gentle suggestions, created small obstacles until gradually, almost imperceptibly, Jennifer's world became smaller and smaller. What Jennifer didn't know, what David made absolutely certain she would never discover, was that their financial situation was a complete fabrication. The comfortable middle-class life they appeared to live, the stability and security she believed they had, none of it was real. David Mitchell was drowning in debt. Over the course of their marriage, he'd taken out 3 personal loans, totaling $80,000. He'd maxed out 4 credit cards, in both their names. He'd borrowed $20,000 from his brother and another $15,000 from his firm's partners. The money had gone to gambling, mostly online poker and sports betting, a habit he'd hidden from Jennifer entirely. He placed bets during his lunch break, late at night after she fell asleep, on his phone while sitting right next to her on the couch. He lost far more than he won, kept betting bigger to try to recoup his losses, fell deeper and deeper into a hole he couldn't climb out of. The debt collectors started calling in early 2022. David intercepted every call, every letter, paid the minimum when he could, stalled when he couldn't. He was making $90,000 a year as a financial advisor, but after the debt payments and the mortgage and the basic cost of living, there was nothing left. He needed money desperately, and he needed it fast. That's when the idea first occurred to him. That's when he started looking at his wife differently. Not as Jennifer, the woman he'd promised to love and protect, but as a solution. As $350,000. David Mitchell spent 6 months researching how to kill his wife and make it look like an accident. He used private browsing windows and a VPN service, searched from coffee shops and the public library, made sure nothing could be traced back to their home computer. He read about hiking accidents, about drowning statistics, about how investigators determine whether a fall was accidental or intentional. He learned that if there's no sign of struggle, no evidence of foul play, and the death occurs in a remote location with no witnesses, police almost always rule it an accident. He learned that life insurance companies pay out in these situations as long as the policy is at least 2 years old, which theirs was. He learned exactly what he needed to do. The plan came together slowly, carefully, each piece fitting into place like a puzzle only he could see. First, he needed to get Jennifer somewhere isolated, somewhere an accident would be plausible. He suggested a camping trip to Rocky Mountain National Park, said they needed time away from everything, time to reconnect as a couple. Jennifer loved the idea, had been saying for months they should take a real vacation. He chose a trail he'd researched extensively, one that led to a cliff overlook with a 200-foot drop. He made the reservation for early September, when the park wouldn't be crowded, when they'd likely have the trail mostly to themselves. Second, he needed Jennifer to be impaired somehow, not thinking clearly, unable to react quickly if she sensed danger. He bought sleeping pills from 3 different pharmacies, crushed them into powder, stored them in an empty vitamin bottle in his gym bag. They left on a Friday morning in early September 2022. Jennifer had taken personal days from school, had packed sandwiches and trail mix, and a new camera she wanted to use for nature photography. She was excited in the way she got about simple things, humming along to the radio during the 3-hour drive, pointing out wildflowers along the highway, talking about her students and the lesson plans she had for the coming weeks. David smiled and nodded and felt absolutely nothing. They set up their tent at the Glacier Basin campground, cooked hot dogs over the fire, played cards as the sun went down. Jennifer fell asleep against his shoulder while they watched the stars, told him she loved him, thanked him for planning this trip. He held her and thought about the $350,000. Saturday morning, David made coffee over the camp stove, stirred crushed sleeping pills into Jennifer's cup while her back was turned. Just enough to make her drowsy and uncoordinated. Not enough to knock her out completely or raise suspicion later during the autopsy. They ate breakfast, packed light day packs with water and snacks, started up the trail toward Alberta Falls and beyond. The sleeping medication hit Jennifer about 45 minutes into the hike. She mentioned feeling lightheaded, said maybe she hadn't slept well, suggested they take it slow. David agreed, supportive and concerned, offered his arm when the trail got steep. They climbed higher into the mountains, past other hikers heading back down, deeper into the wilderness. The overlook was everything David had hoped it would be when he found it during his research trip 3 months earlier. A rocky outcropping that jutted over a sheer cliff face. No guardrails, no safety barriers, just stone and air and a 200-foot drop into a boulder field below. The view was spectacular, the kind that made you want to get close to the edge, to lean out and see as far as possible. They were alone. The nearest hikers were at least half a mile back down the trail. Jennifer walked toward the edge, camera in hand, wanting to capture the vista. David could see she was unsteady on her feet, struggling slightly to focus. This was the moment he'd been planting for 6 months. This was what everything had been building toward. He moved up beside her, putting his hand on her lower back in what would look like a protective gesture to anyone watching. Jennifer turned to smile at him, to say something about how beautiful it all was, how grateful she was that they'd done this. And David pushed. Not hard, not obviously, just a subtle shift of pressure at exactly the moment when she was already off balance from the medication. Jennifer stumbled forward, her foot sliding on loose gravel, her arms pinwheeling as she tried to catch herself. For one terrible second, she was tilting over the edge, gravity pulling her down, nothing between her and the rocks 200 feet below. And then her hand caught the strap of David's backpack. She grabbed it reflexively, instinctively, her fingers closing around the nylon webbing with the desperate strength of someone falling. David felt the sudden weight pull him forward, felt Jennifer's grip on his pack dragging him toward the edge. He had a choice in that split second. He could shake her off, could let her fall, could finish what he'd started. Or he could save her, could reach back and grab her wrist, could pull her to safety. He chose to save her, but not because something in him had changed, not because he suddenly remembered he loved her or couldn't go through with murder. He saved her because he heard voices coming up the trail behind them, heard a group of hikers approaching the overlook. Witnesses. He grabbed Jennifer's arm and hauled her back from the edge, wrapped his arms around her, played the role of terrified husband. She was shaking and crying, clinging to him, saying she didn't know what happened, saying she felt so dizzy and disoriented. The hikers reached them 30 seconds later, a family with 2 teenage kids, asking if everything was okay, if anyone needed help. David explained that his wife had gotten too close to the edge, had almost fallen, that they were both just shaken up but fine now. The father offered them energy bars and water, said they should sit and rest before heading back down. David thanked them profusely, kept his arm around Jennifer, maintained the performance. Inside, he was calculating. Inside, he was already planning the next attempt. Jennifer couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened at that cliff, something she was missing. The sleeping medication had worn off by the time they got back to camp, and in the clarity that followed, she kept replaying those seconds at the edge. She remembered being dizzy, remembered moving toward the overlook to take a photo, remembered starting to fall. But there was something else, something her mind couldn't quite grasp, a shadow of a memory that felt important. She remembered David's hand on her back right before she stumbled. She remembered how she'd felt suddenly off balance, how it seemed like the world tilted in a way that didn't match her own movement. When they got home Sunday evening, Jennifer tried to sleep but couldn't. She lay awake next to her husband, listening to him breathe, feeling like she was sleeping next to a stranger. Monday morning, she called, in sick to school, for the first time in 3 years, waited for David to leave for work, then started looking through his things. She didn't know what she was searching for, just knew she needed to find something. Anything that would explain the wrongness she felt. She found his gym bag in the closet, unzipped it, discovered the vitamin bottle full of white powder. She took it to the bathroom, compared it to their actual vitamins, saw immediately that these weren't the same. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone and searched for the markings on the pills. Zolpidem, sleeping medication. Jennifer sat on the bathroom floor and everything clicked into place. Jennifer drove to her sister's house, told her everything, showed her the pills, explained what had almost happened at the cliff. Her sister wanted to call the police immediately, but Jennifer stopped her, said they needed proof, said David would just deny everything and make her look paranoid. She needed evidence. She needed to catch him. Jennifer became a detective in her own marriage, moving carefully, revealing nothing to David while she gathered pieces of the truth. She checked the bank accounts for the first time in years and discovered the debt, the loans, the maxed-out credit cards, the financial disaster David had hidden from her completely. She found the life insurance paperwork in his filing cabinet, saw the $350,000 payout, saw that he was the sole beneficiary. She set up a hidden camera in their home office, caught David researching hiking accidents and insurance claim procedures, and how long it takes for sleeping medication to leave the bloodstream. She made copies of everything, stored it all at her sister's house, built a case piece by piece. 2 weeks after the camping trip, Jennifer called the insurance company and changed her beneficiary from David to her parents. She didn't tell him. She waited to see what would happen. 3 days later, David suggested another trip, this time to a lake in Wyoming, said they should try to recapture the peace they'd felt before the cliff incident, should create better memories together. Jennifer agreed, but this time she had a plan of her own. Jennifer wore a wire to the lake, a recording device her sister had ordered online, and helped her hide under her hiking clothes. She acted normal throughout the drive, throughout dinner, the first night, gave David no reason to suspect she knew anything. Saturday morning, David made coffee again, and Jennifer watched him carefully as he prepared it, saw him turn his back to her for just a moment, saw his hand move toward her cup. She didn't drink it. When he wasn't looking, she dumped it in the bushes, filled the cup with lake water, pretended to sip it throughout breakfast. They went for a walk along the shoreline, away from the campground, away from other people. Jennifer felt the weight of the recording device against her ribs, felt her heart hammering, knew this was it. She stopped at a spot where the bank dropped off sharply into deep water, turned to face her husband. She asked him directly, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking, why he'd put sleeping pills in her coffee that morning. David's face went blank for a moment, and then he laughed it off. Said she was being ridiculous. Said maybe she should see someone about her paranoia. Jennifer didn't back down, said she knew about the debt, about the life insurance, about what he'd tried to do at the cliff. And something in David Mitchell snapped. The mask fell away completely. He admitted everything. Standing there by that lake with no one around to hear them, David Mitchell told his wife exactly what he'd done and why. He said the debt had gotten out of control, said he needed the money desperately, said the life insurance payout was the only solution he could see. He said he'd planned it carefully, had researched for months, had been so close to succeeding at the cliff, until those hikers showed up and ruined everything. He said this was Jennifer's fault anyway. Said if she'd just died like she was supposed to, none of this would be necessary now. He said he didn't want to hurt her. Said he'd tried to make it painless. Said $350,000 was more than her life was worth anyway. Given how little teachers made. Jennifer listened to the man she'd married, the man she'd trusted with her whole heart, describe in detail how he'd planned to murder her, and she felt like she was watching a stranger speak. She asked him about the woman, because she'd found text messages on his secret phone. Messages to someone named Amanda, who was apparently pregnant. David shrugged, said Amanda understood him in ways Jennifer never did, Said once he got the insurance money, he and Amanda were going to start over somewhere new, probably California, probably with new identities. He described a future where Jennifer was dead and forgotten, where he was living her life insurance money with another woman and their child. Jennifer had everything she needed. The recording captured it all, David's voice clear and unmistakable as he confessed to attempted murder and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. She told him she was leaving, started walking back toward the campground, expected him to let her go since his plan had failed. But David grabbed her arm, spun her around, and she saw in his eyes that he was going to try again right there, was going to push her into the lake and hold her under and claim she'd slipped and drowned before he could save her. Jennifer screamed as loud as she could, fought him off, scratched his face deep enough to draw blood. A park ranger heard her screams and came running, found David with his hands around Jennifer's throat, pulled him off, called for backup. The police arrested David Mitchell at the lake that afternoon, and when they searched his truck, they found rope and zip ties and a heavy wrench in a bag under the passenger seat. Tools he'd brought, in case drowning, didn't work, in case he needed another method. They brought him in for questioning, played him the recording Jennifer had made, watched his face as he heard his own voice confessing to everything. He didn't deny it, didn't ask for a lawyer until it was far too late. He just asked if Jennifer was okay, and when they said yes, he nodded and said that was unfortunate. The investigation expanded quickly once police got involved. They obtained a warrant for David's phone records and discovered hundreds of text messages with Amanda Cole, a 32-year-old dental hygienist he'd met at a conference 2 years earlier. The messages painted a clear picture of conspiracy. Amanda knew about David's plan to kill Jennifer, had helped him research methods, had encouraged him to act. In one message thread from August, 3 weeks before the camping trip, Amanda wrote that she couldn't wait much longer, that the baby was due in January and they needed the insurance monies before then to start their new life. David responded that everything was arranged, that he'd chosen the perfect spot, that it would all be over soon. In another exchange, Amanda asked if David was sure he could go through with it, if he felt bad about what he was planning. David's response was chilling in its simplicity. He wrote that he felt nothing, that Jennifer meant nothing to him, that she was just an obstacle that needed to be removed. Police arrested Amanda Cole at her apartment in Denver, and she immediately broke down, claimed David had manipulated her, said she never actually believed he would hurt anyone, insisted it was all just fantasy talk that got out of hand. The text messages said otherwise. The trial began 14 months later, in November of 2023. David Mitchell was charged with attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and assault. Amanda Cole faced similar charges as an accomplice. Jennifer testified for 3 hours, walked the jury through her marriage, through the camping trip, through discovering the truth and gathering evidence. She played the recording from the lake, and the courtroom fell completely silent as David's voice filled the space, describing how he'd planned to kill his wife. The defense tried to argue that David never actually intended to follow through, that the cliff incident was a genuine accident, that the confession at the lake was coerced under emotional duress. They painted Jennifer as a paranoid spouse who'd manufactured a conspiracy because she'd discovered her husband's affair. But the evidence was overwhelming. The sleeping pills, the financial motive, the detailed internet searches, the messages with Amanda planning their future after Jennifer was dead, the recording where David explicitly stated he'd tried at the cliff and would try again. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found David Mitchell guilty on all counts. They found Amanda Cole guilty of conspiracy, but acquitted her of attempted murder, accepting that while she'd encouraged David, she hadn't actually participated in the physical attempts. David was sentenced to 35 years in prison with no possibility of parole for 25. Amanda received 15 years. Jennifer Mitchell divorced David while he was awaiting trial, reclaimed her maiden name of Jennifer Torres, moved to a different town in Colorado to start over. She took a leave of absence from teaching for a year, went to therapy 3 times a week, worked through the trauma of nearly being murdered by the person she'd trusted most. She struggled with nightmares, with anxiety, with the question that haunted her constantly. How did she miss it for so long? Her therapist explained that manipulators like David are expert at creating a false reality, at making their victims doubt their own perceptions, at hiding their true selves behind carefully constructed masks. Jennifer hadn't been naive or stupid. She'd been targeted by someone who'd spent years learning exactly how to deceive her. In therapy, Jennifer remembered small moments she'd dismissed at the time, but now understood differently. The way David always positioned himself between her and exits at social gatherings. The way he'd discouraged her from taking that self-defense class her friend taught. The way he'd suggest she leave her phone at home when they went hiking because she was too connected to technology. Little things that seemed like quirks or preferences at the time, but were actually parts of a larger pattern of control and manipulation. She realized the cliff attempt wasn't David's first try. There had been other moments, other close calls she'd attributed to clumsiness or accident. A hiking trip where she'd gotten severely dehydrated because David forgot to pack extra water. A camping trip where she'd eaten mushrooms that made her violently ill, mushrooms David had picked and said were safe. Jennifer returned to teaching 2 years after David's arrest, but not at the same school. She took a position in a neighboring district, started fresh with students who didn't know her story, who just saw her as Miss Torres, the nice teacher who always had encouraging words and who organized the best field trips. She became an advocate for financial literacy education, partnering with local organizations to teach people, especially women, how to monitor their own finances and recognize financial abuse. She speaks about her experience when she feels strong enough, shares her story to help others recognize warning signs of dangerous relationships. Jennifer is 40 years old now in 2026, 4 years past the worst moment of her life, and she's learning how to trust again, slowly and carefully. She's dating someone new, a high school history teacher she met through a mutual friend, but she takes things at her own pace now, listens to her instincts in ways she didn't before. She has her own bank accounts, checks her credit report monthly, keeps copies of all important documents at her sister's house. She knows these precautions might seem excessive to someone who hasn't lived what she lived, but they help her feel safe, help her feel in control of her own life. The golden retriever Bailey, who Jennifer kept in the divorce, is older now but still greets her every day with the same enthusiasm, still provides comfort on the hard nights when the nightmares come back. Jennifer says Bailey probably sensed something was wrong with David long before she did, says animals know things humans miss. Jennifer's case isn't unique, though the details are specific to her experience. According to FBI statistics, approximately 40% of female murder victims are killed by intimate partners, and in many cases, financial gain is a significant motive. Life insurance murders happen more frequently than most people realize, hidden among statistics about domestic violence and intimate partner homicide. The warning signs are often visible in hindsight, but easy to miss in the moment. Financial secrecy, isolation from friends and family, controlling behavior disguised as concern, sudden interest in life insurance or estate planning, research into accidents and causes of death. These red flags don't always mean someone is planning murder, but they indicate relationship dynamics that deserve serious attention and possibly intervention. Experts in domestic violence say that one of the most dangerous misconceptions is that abuse and violence always look obvious, that victims should just leave, that anyone with common sense would see it coming. The reality is that perpetrators like David Mitchell are skilled at creating alternate realities, at making their partners question their own judgment, at maintaining a public image that contradicts their private behavior. Friends, family, co-workers all saw David as a model husband. Only Jennifer knew the truth, and even she didn't fully grasp it until she almost died. The question Jennifer gets asked most frequently when she shares her story is how she found the courage to investigate, to gather evidence, to confront David despite the danger. She says it wasn't courage exactly. It was survival instinct. It was the clarity that came after, nearly falling off that cliff. The certainty that something was profoundly wrong, and if she didn't act, she would die. David Mitchell is currently incarcerated at a maximum security facility in Colorado, serving his 35-year sentence. He'll be eligible for parole in 2047 when he's 66 years old. According to reports from the prison, he's been a model inmate, works in the library, takes correspondence courses in business management. He's written several letters to Jennifer over the years, all of which she's returned unopened. His family, who stood by him initially, has largely distanced themselves as the full scope of his actions became clear. His brother, who'd loaned him $20,000, testified at the sentencing hearing about David's gambling addiction and manipulative behavior. Amanda Cole served 7 years of her 15-year sentence before being granted parole in 2025. She gave birth to a son while in prison, and the child was raised by her parents. Upon release, she moved to a different state, reportedly works in a rehabilitation program for women leaving abusive relationships. She's never attempted to contact Jennifer or spoken publicly about the case beyond her trial testimony. The child, David's son who he'll never raise, is now 4 years old and, according to sealed court documents, has no contact with his biological father. Jennifer Torres says the hardest part of her experience wasn't the moment at the cliff when she almost died, wasn't the confrontation at the lake when David admitted everything, wasn't even the trial when she had to relive her trauma in front of strangers. The hardest part has been accepting that she spent 7 years of her life loving someone who was never real. The David she married, the man who made her coffee and held her hand and said she was his everything, that person never existed. He was a character David performed, a role he played to achieve his goals. The real David Mitchell was someone she never knew at all, someone who saw her as $350,000, someone who could plan her murder with the same detachment most people bring to planning a vacation. But Jennifer also says that surviving has taught her things about her own strength she never knew before. She thought she was a gentle person, someone who avoided conflict, who wanted to believe the best in everyone. Turns out she's also someone who can face down her would-be killer, who can gather evidence under impossible circumstances, who can rebuild her life after it's been shattered. She tells people who ask for advice to trust their instincts, even when everyone around them says they're overreacting. She says if something feels wrong, investigate it. If someone makes you feel isolated or controlled, even if they frame it as love, pay attention to that feeling. She says the signs are always there. We just have to be willing to see them. This story raises questions we all need to consider. How well do we really know the people we're closest to? What would we do if we discovered our reality was a carefully constructed lie? Would we recognize the warning signs of danger from someone we trust completely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had an experience where someone you trusted turned out to be completely different than who you thought they were? And if this story affected you, if it made you think differently about trust and relationships and the masks people wear, then hit that subscribe button and share this video. These stories need to be told. And we'll be back soon with another case that will challenge everything you think you know about human nature. Until then, stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember that sometimes the greatest danger comes from the person sleeping right next to you.